Welcome everybody to Pro Wrestling Wire podcast, part of ProWrestlingWire.net. This is Rick Del Santo, and joining me today, wrestling legend Bob Cook. How are you, sir?
Legend. I like the sound of that. Not true, but I like the sound of it. Well,
Well,
that part's true.
I consider that. I mean, you've had quite the legendary career in my eyes.
I wrestled a lot of legends, so if that counts for anything, then I'll go with that one.
Let's talk about your beginnings as of your career. We don't have to go that long if you don't want to, but I
I
want to
got
talk
nothing to
about.
do.
Yeah, well, you trained under the Great Malenko. Talk
Yes, I
about how
did.
you. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, first of all, it was awesome. And I got lucky. Back in those days, 1981, there wasn't Google. When tax season came around, people didn't buy a ring from monsterrings.com and put it in their backyard and start training people. So very limited places to train.
Right.
And I just happened to be coming out of the Fort Homer Hesterly Armory in Tampa, where they held wrestling every Tuesday night for like 30 years. That's where Dory Funk Jr. won the world title, where Dusty Rhodes won the world title. That's the NWA World Championship when it meant something. But I was coming out of the Armory one night, and I had moved to Tampa to become a wrestler after I graduated from high school. I had no idea how I was going to do it. And they used to tape the championship wrestling from Florida TV show at the Sportatorium in Tampa for as long as they ran shows at the Armory. And I went there after a show and I asked an old wrestler, his name was Gordon Nelson, who was actually a legitimate badass in wrestling. Who would later become the guy who was like the ring crew guy in WCW. And I asked him how you become a wrestler. And he said, well, you got to be in really good shape and you come in for a tryout, which in those days meant they'd stretch you. Luckily, I didn't have to go through that. I was coming out of the Armory that night. I know I'm rambling again. I do that a lot on podcasts. And it was a flyer on my car that said, become a professional wrestler. And it was for the Great Malenko School. And I still have the flyer. So become a professional. It's a Great Malenko Wrestling Academy, make big money, travel the world, become a TV star. And, none of that worked out, but, I had a great time. I was on TV, but I wasn't a star. I made a little money, but not a lot. And I didn't travel the world because I hated to fly.
I've never flown in my life. I'm going to be 50 years old. I've
Really?
never flown. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, don't do it. There've been a lot of
Yeah.
plane crashes in the news lately. I don't like it.
Yeah. No,
I got to go to Las Vegas.
My wife's trying to get me to. My wife's trying to get me to travel. I refuse to fly. So,
Yeah, they always say that, well, compared to how many car accidents there are, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but when a car crashes, the airbag opens. When a plane crashes, your body opens.
You go flying from the plane. God knows what
Right.
else
In
happens to
pieces.
you. Yeah, exactly. So what was it like training under the Great Malenko? I had a chance to interview other people such as Barry Horowitz that had trained under him
I know
and
Barry.
and some other such people. And Barry's a great guy, by the way.
Yeah, very
Um,
great. Yeah.
yeah. And he was the first guest on this show for almost 5 years ago.
I could tell you a story about Barry and I on the road once,
Yeah,
but
please do. Please
we
do.
thought we were gonna get killed.
Really,
Yeah.
please tell that
But
story.
but the Great Malenko was awesome. I mean, he didn't beat you up, he didn't stretch
Yeah,
you, even though he could have. And he just taught you wrestling.
yeah.
Every week you learned more, and every week you wanted to learn more and come back. And that's the essence of him. He did a lot of trainers will beat you up and try to show you wrestling's real. And Malenko smartened me up in my time as 1981. What anybody else says is their story and experience. But he smartened up the class I was in very first day. This is a work. This is an art form. The object is to make it look real without being real. Nobody likes a crowbar for all you idiots out there. And there's a lot of idiots out there. You realize that because we're talking to wrestling fans. Well, they always say, oh, lay it in more. They should be stiff. No, they shouldn't. I wrestled some of the biggest legends of all time, the toughest guys to ever walk the planet. Haku, the Steiners, the Road Warriors. You know what they never did? They were never rough with me and they never asked me to hit them harder. Go figure it out, folks. Any idiot can hit somebody too hard.
Yeah.
The art of wrestling is to make it look real without being real. Greatest puncher of all time is Jerry the King Lawler. You know what you felt when he punched you? The bump you took. That's what you felt. And the elation that you got punched by the king.
Were you shocked when that he told you that it was a work?
Not well, yeah, I was actually relieved. When I was a kid, I obviously watched wrestling. Started in '75, getting hooked on championship wrestling from Florida. And in my mind, I wanted to be a wrestler, and I did the backyard wrestling stuff. We copied what we saw on TV. We didn't do it for real. We copied what we saw on TV and what we thought it was about. And when we got there and found out that it wasn't 100% real, because I was never a tough guy, to me, it just made it more fun. You know, it
Yeah.
allowed me as a young man to never have to grow up. That's how I looked at it. And I used the fantasy world of wrestling to escape the real world drama of life. You know, when I was married and I'd leave the house to go to wrestling shows, I didn't have marital problems. My kid didn't talk back to me. I didn't have financial problems. I left them all behind as soon as I got in that car. And back in those days, when you said I'll be home Sunday and you left on Monday, you didn't get a phone call 2 hours later saying, "Hey, when are you going to be home?" You know why? Because we didn't have cell phones. That's why.
Going back and thinking about it, it's crazy how different the world was back then, right? Even 10,
Yeah.
20 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And a lot of people say, well, I wish I could go back there. And I don't. The only thing I wish I could go back there for is just to be younger. The
Yeah.
technology today is amazing. Just doing this kind of stuff is fun for an old guy like me to talk about the past and talk about the great Malenko, and in my case, put him over because he wasn't just a great wrestling trainer. He was a friend. He was a mentor. He was a father figure to me and all the guys that trained under him. I love him. I talk about him as much as I can. And this is what I'm doing here. We're in the Twisted Wrestling Studios here in Inglewood, Florida, where my friend Joe Saraceno has put together an amazing little place for all of us. And I'm trying to start training guys. And I always talk about the Malenko. First thing I do is talk about the Malenko. And Malenko, we trust. Get it?
So you talk about the Twisted Wrestling Alliance there. I understand that's a very big project that you're involved in.
Yeah, we're trying to make it bigger. Everything is a slow build and a work in progress. My friend Joe Saraceno, who's 68 years old, started training to be a pro wrestler at 60 years old.
That's amazing.
He did it with righteous intentions. He didn't do it to feed his own ego. He did it. His young son at the time, I think he was 8 years old, lost his mother at a very young age. And they used wrestling to bond, going to shows, meeting the guys, because you could do all those meet and greets. And then he was at a show in Sarasota, which is right up the road from, I don't know where you live, but Sarasota, Florida.
I'm in
And Fred
Connecticut.
Altman,
Yeah.
Fred Altman had started a wrestling company called Legendary Wrestling Academy. And he was training guys and he was running shows. And Fred's one of my best friends. He
Mhm.
started at the Great Malenko School with, I'm talking about Fred Altman, Tugboat Typhoon, the Shock Master, for all you idiots out there. I did it again. I'm sorry. I don't want to alienate the fans, right?
The first time I saw Fred, he was a big steel man.
Right. He was the big steel man
Yep.
here in Florida under Dusty back in
Yep.
'89. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I live in Connecticut and I used to be obsessed with getting my hands on anything that was out there at the time, magazines and videos and stuff like that. I did a lot of tape trading, so I used to get a lot of the video footage of your area back in the day.
Yeah. To me, it was the best, but everybody thinks that, no matter where you live, if you grew up on certain things, that was
Right.
the best.
Right.
But I forgot what I was talking about. Oh, the wrestling here. Like my
Yeah.
friend Joe, he'd gone to that show. I didn't know him at the time, and he'd gone to that show with his son that Fred had put together. It was at a local dog track, and we were all there hanging out. And one of the trainers at Fred's school, Frankie Reyes, was there, and Joe went up and asked him, what's the oldest guy you would train? And he said, for what? And I said, and he said wrestling. And he goes, yeah, well, I don't know, how old are you? And he said 60. And Joe started training again to keep his kid, his mind off the passing of his mother, and and to just help him out through that time. And it actually made national news.
That's
But
incredible.
anyway, so he had an opportunity to buy this ring. This ring actually belonged to Earthquake originally. And he bought it last year, and it's just evolved into this old school type studio that he set up. We got it. We're always adding new stuff to it, curtaining off different areas to make it look, what old school wrestling, right? Well, of course you do.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Like the
yeah.
old Memphis territory had that the studio look, and lots of different places. But
Yeah. So you're training people and are you recording there's a promotion associated with the school?
yeah, we're
Yeah.
starting to do it. We ran a show last month. We got another show on January 11th, where the legendary Cuban assassin Fidel Sierra, with his manager Fantasy, is teaming up with a guy named Chief Eddie Two Rivers against me and Joe with my beautiful valet, Delicious Tea. But that's all semantics. Is that what they call it? I just like
So,
to put myself over because I'm going to be in a ring with a Cuban assassin, and people should know who that is. He
well,
was Top Gun in
yeah.
the Portland territory. He had
Yeah.
multiple world title matches with the legendary Ric Flair, and he's a great wrestler. And we've been friends for many years. Although he backstabbed me to be in this match I can let bygones be bygones as long as I beat him next weekend
Well,
or
here's a little
2 weeks from
scoop.
now.
Here's a little scoop. He's going to be on the show sometime in the future. A
Oh,
date has not been worked out as of yet. I know he had some things going on, so I have to get back in touch with him. And so I'm looking forward to that. So,
if it's after January 11th, it might have a couple of black eyes on him.
well, I'll have to see. I have to see. So let's talk about
Power
some
of
of
the
the,
punch.
well, I've heard a lot of people say that you have the best punch in professional wrestling.
Well, that's what they say, but I said before the greatest puncher of all time is Jerry the King Lawler. But everybody has their opinions there too. But usually, those opinions aren't accurate, anyways. Because you should be able to look at something and say, "Well, that's the best," or that, you know. But you know
Yeah,
who started that best of the best punch in wrestling was Bill Watts. He
Bill
started that.
Watts. Yeah, yeah. He was very high on you during his time in WCW, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was great, and he actually had me teach his son Eric how to throw a punch.
Really?
But that's the day he started it. Bob Cook has the best punch in wrestling because I just got done wrestling Van Hammer, who, by the way, is another great guy that I talked to the other day. Just put myself over, you know.
That's all right. Because I
But
believe that you're having a podcast, correct? And that you mentioned
yeah,
him.
no, you know, when I talked to him, actually it was yesterday. I was at the gym. Yeah, I go to the gym. I know, don't look like it, but he called me and he apologized that he doesn't want to do it now because he said every time he goes, I thought about it, and every time I go back in the public eye, all I do is get the negative, you know, the negativity from the fans and from the wrestling media. And I said, well, don't let that bother you. He goes, yeah, I just don't want to do it. I said, I understand. You know, people can be mean.
Yeah,
I've known him since he started. He's a great guy. He had an opportunity given to him, and like a person with brains, which, you know, if someone said, hey, I'll give you $150,000 a year, you want to take it? No, why would I want to do that? Of course you do. You take it, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
you make the best of it. And people are just so mean because they're either jealous or they didn't get the same opportunities that he did, and that's on them, not him. But I understand his trepidation. That's a big word, I know. I don't even really know what it means, but it sounds cool. Uh,
I mean, he
to come
should.
on the show, you know.
Yeah, he should be out there, get his story out there and stuff like that. Because I know he's made the news in the past with some not so positive. But you can't hold that against people. You know what I mean? You
Yeah,
never.
and I understand it,
Yeah.
but I was hooking him up with a guy who makes trading cards, custom trading cards, and they pay the people. They'll make us like a certain number, 150, 200, and send them to you to sign them, and they'll give you some money, and you send them back. And I'm actually
Right.
getting a deal too, but that's what I was calling him for as far as that goes. I made
Right.
him get him a little extra money, and he won't even come on the podcast. What's up with that, Mark? That's his real name. Sorry.
Nope. Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about some. You started in Florida, obviously, for
Yeah.
championship wrestling from Florida. I was looking up some of
Well,
your matches. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I did. That was like first match I had in championship wrestling from Florida was 1986, and I started in '81. So there was, a few
Yeah.
years of wrestling, for all the independents. And Malenko every once in a while would find a money mark, and
Right.
he'd get a TV show started. Like the first TV show I was ever on was one that he started. It was called IWWA Wrestling, which his great sons Joe and Dean. I talked to Joe yesterday on the phone. There I go. See, I'm doing it again. I'm dropping names, but I
Well,
love the
he's
Malenkos, and
I saw that you had posted that he's getting inducted into the Florida MMA Hall of Fame.
yes.
Yep.
And he invited me to be there, which I will definitely do with a big smile on. I'd probably be wearing my Terry Funk boots. That's what I like to do. If anybody knows what those are, then you know. But yeah, Joe's a great guy, Dean. But they were all part of that first TV show that I was, involved in. And again, it wasn't until '86 I wrestled for championship wrestling from Florida. That was one of the biggest thrills of my life. Wrestling at the Sportatorium, which I didn't go to very often as a kid, but I saw it on TV every week.
Right.
And then going home that night because they taped on Wednesday mornings, and then they would air the original airing in our area on channel 44 WTOG. I remember the names on 7 o'clock on Saturdays. When going home that night, that week, and watching the show, and Gordon Soley calling my match, I was like, man, this is the coolest thing ever. And my dad, who never liked wrestling, he never did dislike it because he thought it was fake, like a lot of people. Oh, that's ridiculous. He just could never understand why you'd want to do that to your body because he saw what I went through going to the Malenko school. And again, Malenko didn't beat you up, but the natural progression of the business is a rough business. Taking the bumps, learning the moves, hitting the ropes. You have bruises on your sides, and he'd see me come home after training exhausted and beat up, and he didn't like that. He couldn't understand the mentality of that. But when I wrestled on championship wrestling from Florida for the first time, and he saw it, and he's like, "I got to admit, son, that's pretty damn cool." Just because he knew how much I loved it, you know.
Yeah. When you finally made it to TV, he was excited for you.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's
because that
awesome.
was more, you know, I was like syndicated all over the state, and actually in certain other states too, like I think New York got
We
the
used to get
Florida
it up
show,
here.
and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it was a
I'm all the
great
way.
time.
Yeah.
Uh,
I used to like that back in that day in the 80s when the big 80s wrestling boom. We used to, for some reason, we used to get syndicated shows from all over the country, really. We got World
yeah,
Class and USWA or AWA rather, and the Savoldis and stuff like that. We got all sorts of stuff up here.
yeah, you had that block of wrestling was like Pro Wrestling Weekly with Joe Pedicino and
Yep. Uh,
Gordon Soley, I think, was part of that.
yeah, Bill Apter was part of it as
Yeah,
well at
Bill
one
was part of
point.
that. Yeah,
Yep.
another great guy. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a fun time because that show like showed wrestling from all over the place, and that
Yeah,
was
even
like,
I was on there a few times. Or
yeah,
like I getting beat up by Scott Hall. I think it was like an 87 episode when he
yeah,
came to Florida.
yeah.
Most money I ever made was wrestling Scott Hall at the Orange Bowl in Miami in '87 for the Great American Bash, like the second version of the War Games match.
Oh wow.
I wasn't even supposed to be there. You know, a couple of friends of mine went down there because we wrestled for Championship Wrestling from Florida, but we weren't booked on the show. But it was a big, huge show. It's the Orange Bowl. So we
Yeah,
just went there, and you're always taught to bring your stuff. And as soon as I get there, Kevin Sullivan goes, "Bobby, have you got your stuff?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course," because he always called me Bobby. I just put that out there. But he said, "You got your stuff?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Go get it. You're wrestling Scott." I was like, "Whoa!" It was awesome. You know, the match only lasted like 2 minutes. One of those things where you attack him, da 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 da, power slam, leg drop, boom, that's it, easy money. But
yeah,
anyways, I just threw that out there. Rest in
yeah.
peace, Scott. He was a cool guy.
Yeah, nice guy. I met him a couple times. I actually met him at a autograph signing at a video arcade here up here in Connecticut many, many years ago. And as he was Razor Ramon, nice guy though.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about you had a chance to work with the Armstrongs and Tracy Smothers in Florida at one point. I'm a huge Armstrongs fan and Tracy Smothers fan. Let's talk about this a little bit.
Yeah, they were great. And
Yeah.
also one time on Championship Wrestling from Florida, I don't remember who my partners were. It was me and two other guys against Bob Armstrong, Tracy Smothers, and Steve Armstrong. And that was just fun. Other than the fact that I kicked Steve in the let's say, hey nano nano by mistake. You know, I actually kicked him like in the top of his penis, let's be correct. Because we was on the ropes to go to break, and I threw my boot up and I kicked him, and he goes, "Oh, you kicked me in the," you know. And of course, he did. You know, nobody really holds grudges. Like the first time I wrestled on Championship Wrestling from Florida, I wrestled a guy named oh geez, Sean Royal,
Okay.
and I blacked his eye by mistake. We had a really good match, and I shot him off the ropes, and I was going to give him a knee to the gut. When I give him the knee to the gut, I brought my elbow up. I caught him in the eye because for a brief second, when he falls down, you can see him. He grabs his eye, but then he starts showing his gut. So I'm thinking to myself, oh, boy, that wasn't very good. First time ever, right? And you get back to the dressing room, and I was, oh man, I'm so sorry. He goes, hey, it's part of the business. You know, he's really cool about it. So there you go.
That was good that he was kind of relaxed about it instead of getting mad about it.
Yeah, because I mean, he was just starting to get his big push, and he could have been a real jerk, and you know, but he
Yeah.
was really cool. We had a lot of matches over the years. He was a really nice guy. He's a guy who teamed with Chris Champion as a new breed back in the day, and then
Right. Yeah.
they had that accident that kind of shortened that deal. But and Chris is another guy who was trained by the Great Malenko.
Yeah. Yeah. You ended up going to Memphis for a little bit.
Yeah, that was
Was how
that was you talk about the Southern Boys. That's what started that.
yeah,
'Cause that was in 80.
87 for according to my research. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was literally 2 days after I got married.
Oh wow.
Because I got married on a Saturday. The next day, obviously, was a Sunday, and I had to drive down to Miami to do a TV taping for a new company that was financial. What do you call that? Publicly traded. One of the first wrestling companies publicly traded, called Global Wrestling Alliance.
Okay.
And we had Angela Papa work for us, and Ox Baker, Adrian Street. And Malenko was involved in it. That's why I got anytime Malenko was involved in something, I always got an extra rub, you know. And actually, one of the guys from that company, Bobby Wales, who wrestled for Florida Wrestling and passed away this week, unfortunately. But anyways, and then the next day we drove to Memphis. My wife and mom came with me. But the reason that happened was because the original Southern Boys were supposed to work to Memphis for this period of time, but they had signed a deal. I don't know if it signed a deal, but agreed to go work for Jim Crockett, who, you know, Jim Crockett. And so they couldn't make the Memphis dates. And I had been sending out pictures to promoters. And at the time, I had blonde hair briefly. And that's one of the pictures I sent to Jerry Jarrett. And he called me and he goes, "Hey, we like the way you look. We want to do this Southern Boy. We want to team you up with a guy named Bucky Sigler."
Wow.
And I didn't really know Bucky at the time, but ended up meeting him in Atlanta. My mom and my wife came with me. And we met Bucky in Atlanta. And then they followed me and him to the Memphis territory. And it was only like a 2-week thing, and we got fired. I actually think it was Randy Hales who fired me. He's like, Bob, you guys finish up in a couple weeks. We weren't making any money anyways. Had a great time for the brief time I was there, but ended up spending more money than I made. A lot of fun time, like only 2 weeks, but a fun time.
Did he tell you
Got to
why
work with
you,
some great people.
did he tell you why you were fired?
I think it was because they were the Southern Boys were booked for a certain number of dates, and we just filled
Right.
those dates, and they were, or
Yeah.
I sucked. I don't know. I hated being a babyface, anyways. Like when we first got there, it was me and Bucky. We go to Jerry Jarrett's house, and we're standing there in his living room, and he's like, "This is how times have changed, right?" He goes, "I want you guys to go to an army surplus store, get some denim jackets and rebel flags, and sew them to the back of your jackets." And we were the good guys. Rebel flags in those days weren't so offensible.
It's amazing how time has changed, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I mean, we got some flags hanging in here, and I can go over there and I could try to cut my wrists with them. I could slap them across my face as hard as I want, but they won't hurt me at all. Imagine a flag not being able to hurt you at all, but yet for some reason people get all crazy over a flag. Doesn't matter what
Uh,
it symbolizes either.
yeah,
It's just a
yeah,
freaking flag.
yeah. I know. People get offended by that in TV, and well, people are offended by everything these days. And
Oh, I think some people actually wake up with a list like, well, I was offended by that yesterday, but I'm gonna try to be offended by this today. It's like there's people watching Raw right now, the last Raw on the USA Network after 30 years, and people are probably just sitting there going, "Oh well, I can't believe they did this." No one's ever happy. It's ridiculous.
people, I did see today. So of course, it's a website obviously associated with this podcast. So I see a lot of people. We did a preview of it, and then I'm looking online, and there's so many people complaining about the fact that they're not going to purchase Netflix just to watch Raw. I'm just
Yeah,
like, how many people have Netflix? I mean, it doesn't look like, I'm not going to say everybody, but a good portion of the human race has Netflix.
about 300 million people worldwide have Netflix,
Yeah.
which is like 4 times the audience of Raw. Like Raw only reaches like 78 million or something, but
Yeah.
almost 300 million have Netflix, and it's only $6.99 a month. I've actually seen people go, "I'm not going to pay for Netflix. I've watched Raw for years on my cable. I'm not paying for Raw." I'm thinking, wait a minute now. You got some kind of secret where you get cable for free, you idiot?
Yeah, that's,
You know,
you're exactly right because I was like, you're paying for cable, you're still paying for
you're paying
Raw.
like what, probably $90 a month for cable, and you're complaining about
Oh,
6.99. Just don't drink another pack of beer for a week, and you'll be fine.
you're
Or
lucky
lay
if
off on a
they're
pack of cigarettes.
you're lucky if they're paying $90 for cable. I can't tell you what mine is. It's like close to 200. It's
Holy crap!
ridiculous.
So that's even better. I mean,
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah, it's just cable is just ridiculously high now. Of course, I myself don't use cable a lot. My wife does, and she's got to have, of course, every streaming service on top of it. So,
Yeah, well,
yeah, yeah.
but
So
the thing is though, besides Raw on Netflix, there's a lot of great programs on Netflix. I mean,
yes,
a
there is.
lot of awesome original movies, old movies,
Yep.
original TV shows, documentaries. If you
So
can't
it's
find something to watch on Netflix, you're unable to be pleased by any type of viewing experience.
it's worth the 6.99 a month, folks. Just
I say
Bob
it
Cook
is.
says so. Yeah,
Well, I mean, I don't care what people do, but I've had Netflix for years. I mean, I don't care what you know.
I
I think
think
it'll be
I've
fun to see how they do things on, the new. And
yeah.
I've heard they're not going to get more edgy. People are going to be complaining, "Oh, they don't do this." You don't need to go on there and cuss. If you can't get your point across, like AEW, they like to throw out the F word now and then. Not F word so much, but
Yeah.
shit and different things every once in a while. But they don't add to nothing.
No, it's kind of childish if you ask me. You know what I mean? Them trying to be edgy and cool, but it's like it doesn't add anything to it, really.
Clearly, it's not building their audience.
No.
And people complain about, well, we're just going to be watching like the Tyson fight. We're all going to be this and that. The Tyson fight had over 60 million people trying to stream it at one time, over 100 million after the thing aired.
No.
Raw's not going to have that problem. Even Triple H mentioned that. He goes, "We wish we would have that problem."
It's a lot different than it was at the peak in like 1999 or 2001 or whatever when they were getting, I think they're only getting what, 1 to 2 million viewers now currently, something like
Yeah, like
that.
1.5, something like that. But
And I
you
think
know,
that back then they were like 5 and 6 million, so they're not going to have that issue.
and I think a lot of it is, different. They figure everything. It's like who watched it live, who watches it on, do TiVo, not TiVo, whatever,
On demand,
DVRs it.
whatever. Yeah,
Who
DVR.
watches the YouTube videos? Who does this? There's all different ways to watch wrestling or anything nowadays. But
Yeah,
obviously, Raw's doing okay, or they wouldn't have got a $5 billion deal. And people complain about that. It's like the NFL had two games last week on Netflix. I don't watch football, but I pay attention to these things. People complain like crazy. Oh, I'm not paying for football. And I'm thinking, what? It's sick. I told you I was like $6.99 a month. If you care that much about the games, pay it, cancel afterwards. You
yeah.
know,
I mean,
don't go to McDonald's once.
yeah, there you go. There's a lot of ways that you can watch your sports. I mean, there's Peacock, airs live. I get Peacock free through my cable. It's like, we get the $5 tier to watch it.
Yep.
So I get to watch the WWE shows and, we watch the Olympics through there because they weren't airing every single thing, on
Yeah.
the regular cable TV. But so it's having some of these, it's like it's worth having Netflix, trust me.
And I tuned into the football just to see if there'd be any issues. And
Yeah,
probably more people watch those games than are going to watch Raw. And there was no
absolutely.
issues. The only
Absolutely.
thing I thought was weird is that Netflix paid them $150 million to air those two games. But as
Wow.
soon as they aired, they were gone that day. It's like you couldn't even go back and watch them in the replay, which is like if you're paying that kind of money, couldn't you think they would have made a deal like, can't we just keep them on the channel? But no, they had to get rid of them. It was crazy.
The other thing, the only thing that I'm really concerned about with the Netflix deal is like the archive footage, like the older stuff, not
Yeah, that's
necessarily going
scary.
over. Yeah,
That's
because
what you're hearing. I mean,
I like to
it,
watch the old stuff, go back and
yeah, I do
watch.
too.
Yeah,
But at least the network, as far as I call it, the network still on Peacock's,
yeah,
got another year to go. But if you're
yeah,
outside the USA, you're screwed. But if you notice, there's a lot of like you ever go to Netflix, you look at like coming this week, coming next week. There's a
yeah,
lot of WWE programming listed. Like there's Best of WrestleMania, there's this, there's that, there's that. I clicked on all those reminders, just to see how they go.
yeah, yeah. I mean, no, I mean, it's the power. There's also the power of YouTube where we could sit there and watch a lot of the archive footage or
And
lost
that new
stuff. It might
channel
not
on YouTube, the WWE Vault, you follow
correct.
that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I
They're
think that's
uploading.
almost I think that's almost like they had that set up knowing that this is going to happen, so they're going to start being able to
Right.
put more on there because that's got almost 1 million subscribers already.
Yeah, they've uploaded a lot of like rare stuff to it so far, and it's some of it's not like full events yet, but there's like,
Yeah,
like matches and clips and maybe hour-long TV shows, but whatever. But I think that it's also still in its infancy as well.
yeah. Again, I think it's all work in progress, but I like the idea of the old network just because you could, like, you want to go back and watch all the nitros in order in conjunction with the pay-per-views, and they're all right there for you. Since it's been on Peacock, though, it's a little harder to you got to pay more attention to how to
Yeah,
maneuver and get to things, and the search is horrible. Like the old network, you could put in Terry Funk, and like everything that has a Terry Funk segment on it shows up.
right.
That
Yeah,
was the best. But that, semantics, and all the, it's, did I use that word twice in this interview? I don't know.
you definitely did, definitely did.
Oh,
Uh,
man. I hate
but
to repeat myself.
nah, you're good, you're good. But there's,
That's just semantics.
a lot of stuff is like WWE owns so much archive footage from WCW, Smoky Mountain, and a lot of
Yeah.
places that,
Florida wrestling, even.
yeah, that hasn't even seen the light of day since they've owned it.
Yeah. They used to have, before the network, they had a thing called WWE 24/7.
Right. I had that. I was one of the first
Yeah. I
subscribers on
recorded a
that.
lot of programming off of
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
back in the day. And they always had a Florida segment, different things. But, the network, for the most part, was a great invention when it
Yeah.
first came out. So that'll
Yeah.
be sad to see if they maybe Netflix will end up putting more than people think. Everybody just panics because when it moved from the regular network to Peacock, people were like, "Oh no, we're not going to have this," and then it took a little time, but they trickled everything over.
Yeah. They said they were going to concentrate on like the more current stuff, but they were putting it over. And I think it took them 6 months to get all of that stuff
Yeah,
over. But I think that a lot of it, some of it didn't make it over, but whatever. But I think that because the NBC thing, like some of the stuff had to be censored
yeah,
with,
which is pathetic, right?
yeah, yeah, I know, I know.
I think there's certain well, they actually will. pause a video to the chair shot or something. I was like, come on,
Yeah.
but people are sensitive nowadays, I guess.
Yeah. Well, they took out the Roddy Piper Bad News Brown match from
Oh
WrestleMania.
my God, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
God.
Yeah. And they edit a lot of the music. They overdub like a lot of music
Well, that part
because
I understand because
yeah.
of copyrights and people get upset about that. That to me, that's ridiculous because it's like such a you got a great match with Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle at WrestleMania, whatever, and you're upset because the 2 minute entrance doesn't have the original music. It's like shut up and watch the match, you know?
Some of it is kind of like I guess mind-boggling watching some of it. Like Rick Rude coming out to a different version of his
Yeah,
theme
but
song, you know.
at the end of the day, who do you blame for that?
Yeah.
Honestly, you don't blame
Yeah.
NBC, you don't blame WWE, you blame you and me and people like us, not us because we watch it. You blame the
Yeah.
wrestling fans who didn't take the time to watch the old footage because of all the footage, it's the least watched. So there's no
Right.
motivation if they go back and go, well, this WCW show only got 500 views. However, I'm sure they can track that stuff. It doesn't get very many views. We're not going to pay so and so the rights to his music for people who don't care. But if
Yeah.
more people watched it, they might be more inclined to go, yeah, okay, we'll put it in. I don't
I,
know. I'm just saying.
I don't think the viewers are guys such as our age. All I watch really for the most part is older wrestling. I do keep up on the modern product, but the
Yeah.
majority of what I watch is going on YouTube watching old worldwides and NWA pros and AWA stuff, like all sorts of older stuff. And they don't put any of that stuff up on the network, though they own the rights to it.
I watch all the shows every week,
Yeah,
sort of, just because you can
yeah,
record them and I go back. I usually end up fast forwarding through a lot. But I always watch the pay-per-views or the PLEs as they're called.
yeah. I watch
I
the
don't watch the
SmackDowns. I make sure to
yeah.
watch SmackDown, and then I try to watch Raw, but sometimes it depends because it's on
Well,
late.
there's so
So
much repetition.
yeah,
So much repetition, like the same matches, the same feud. I mean, how long can you keep it going? The same people, like the New Day would come out today, and I was just like, hey, I don't wish ill on anybody, but the guys have had a job for years. Give it to somebody else, put somebody else
yeah,
in the spot.
yeah.
But that's
They
just
put a
me.
No, I get it because you get tired of seeing the same people over and over, and you know
But I always
they
watch the PLEs. They're worth it.
they've been. I've always watched. I really do enjoy the live events, the PLEs, pay-per-views, whatever. But and especially as of late, they've been a lot better. You know?
I like the fact that they've cut down on the matches and they give them more time to develop and
Yeah,
they don't go 5 hours. Not that I never complained about that because people who are like, oh, I can't believe WrestleMania went 5 hours. What else you gonna do? You're sitting in front of the TV watching, you're hanging out, you eating chips and drinking beer, whatever you do. In my case, ice cold Mountain Dew. And you're like, oh, I can't believe it lasted so long. But if it would have went shorter, you just switched over and watched something else. Your fat ass ain't getting up doing nothing. So sit there and shut up and watch it. Imagine back in the day when you were paying $60 or $70 for the HD version of a WWE show.
right.
If it ran less than 3 hours, people complained about it.
They were
If
always
it,
two. They were always 2 hours and 45 minutes, or
yeah, but
roughly.
people complained
Yeah,
about it, and it's like if it went 2 hours and 37 minutes, oh my god, I can't believe So could you imagine complaining? Then if it went 4 hours, you're like, oh my god, I got more than my money's worth. Damn it! It's like, geez, shut up. It's just a TV show. You're just sitting there watching.
yeah. What else are you gonna do
Let's
with your
right.
Saturday
Unless you got
night or Sunday
right.
night?
Unless you got open heart surgery scheduled for the morning, relax. Good Lord, people are just so sensitive. Of all the things to complain about, you complain about a company giving you more
Yeah.
than you wanted.
And especially if it's on the like was on the network or what have you, because it was 9.99 a month, and their events were
Yeah,
about
yeah, that was really
six
good then.
hours, include with the pre-show and stuff like that.
Yeah, and people complain about that too. I can't believe it's a 2 hour pre-show. Well, there's two things you can do. You can watch it or you cannot watch it. Holy mackerel. It's there for your pleasure if you choose to take it, or you don't have to choose to take it. That's the stupidest thing ever to complain. The pre-show's 2 hours. Well, don't watch it. I tune in when the show starts usually because they don't even
Yeah,
have extra matches now. So it's just them talking, the talking heads. It
yeah,
gives Big E a place to sit and make some money, and that's fine. It's nothing more than just chatter. And if I'm lazy or not lazy, well, I'm always lazy. That's my MO. But if you're sitting there and I'll watch it, but most of the time I just tune in. It doesn't bother me. I don't care if it's 4 hour pre-show. It doesn't mean you have to watch it. That's the point.
right. There's always that remote. You can put on something else in that 2 hours to watch something else. Exactly, and
Exactly.
take up that time. Yeah,
Right.
I usually tune in roughly. couple minutes before because
Right.
I kind of miss the pre-show matches, but they weren't really ever anything special to write home about, really.
No, it is weird that they just don't do it though. Give a couple of
Yeah.
pre-show match. I think more people would tune in if, you know, could be wrong. I don't know.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, it might get people hyped up.
Because I never know what's going on behind the scenes. What do they call it? The method to their madness. I don't know. It's like
Right.
people who complain. I go, well, so and so should get pushed. This should happen. That should happen. If you don't know the true inner workings of what's going on behind the scenes, you have no right to say that. There could
Yeah.
be all kinds of things going on that keep someone from getting pushed, whether they're being late all the time, they give an attitude when they're asked to do something simple, they can't grasp something even simpler, and they're like, we can't push this guy. He's not reliable. And you don't know that. You just sit back and go, well, he's good because I saw a great match. You know, it's
Yeah.
like people complain about Logan Paul. The kid's fantastic. He has more love and passion and shows more respect to the business than most people in it, especially the wrestling fans who watch it. And yet they get mad when he gets a push. I'm like, the guy's reliable. He's got more followers than any wrestler out there individually, and more than a lot of them combined. So he brings an audience of his own to his show
He's wildly
until he,
popular. Yeah,
right,
he's got millions of YouTube followers. What's he have under his belt? 10 matches, maybe? Maybe?
some, but they've all been good.
A
You know,
fantastic performer. Yeah.
right. So if he until he does something to change my mind, like all of a sudden he gets an attitude and well, I'm not going to lose to this guy, or he gets an attitude backstage. I say you let the guy go.
Yeah.
I don't mean let him go by firing. I mean just let him play along. As long as he's willing.
Yeah. No, I've been wildly impressed with him, everything he's done so far. And, I think wrestling fans are the worst critics, I think.
Oh, they are. Well, I mean, if he came in out of shape and he didn't put in the effort, okay, you complain. But the guy's in amazing shape. He's got an incredibly beautiful wife, which is always a plus. I always like to throw that out there because I'm superficial. And if his wife was ugly, I'd change my attitude. I'd say, "What's he doing on TV?" No, but you know what I'm saying? Though he shows up in shape. He basically, I guess, does what he's told. I don't know, and he puts on a great match. Hell, remember that match where he almost saved Rey Mysterio from potentially being paralyzed?
Yes.
What's
Yes.
the matter with you people?
Yeah.
What it
People,
is that people they perceive somebody as who they think they are based on the persona they allow them to see without truly knowing the person, and that's how they base their like or dislike on a person. Like you'll see a character or a person on a talk show who's nothing like they are in real life, and all of a sudden, well, I don't like that guy. Well, he's just it's just what people do. It's like Jake Paul. I don't know him in real life, but the guy's an
yeah.
amazing promoter. Look what they did with Tyson fight.
He's a character, and that's all he
Yeah,
is. And it got people to view, and it got people invested. It's the art of
right.
the art
He
of promoting, the art of
right
it's
hype.
professional wrestling, 101 basically.
And I don't care what anybody says, and I'm sure you don't even agree, but I don't believe the Mike Tyson fight was fixed. I believe they went out there and it
It
is
was
what
a
it is.
work.
And
Yeah,
I don't believe it for a second because there's
yeah,
too much involved in that to be a work. You can't do that. There's too much involved in that, even legally, you can't do that because they took bets on the damn thing. If
yeah.
they found out that was a work, they'd be in so much freaking trouble. It
Oh
doesn't matter
yeah.
what people can think; they can say whatever they want. It's like there's some idiots out there who sit there who've never done anything athletic in their lives and say football is a work. But it would be impossible for football to be a work. I'm not saying that a football player didn't owe a bunch of money to a gangster and he threw the game to make money up on a bet that no one else knew about. But there's no way that football can be a work.
Yeah. No, I,
There's
I,
too many people involved, and there's too much pride involved in the people who play it, and every state around the country that has a team. But
too
that's
many
just me.
people,
I'm not an old wrestler who's cynical and believes everything's a work.
too many people in the back in the day have gotten in trouble for things like that. So I mean, it's kind of it's not that
But it's
easy to
usually a
get away with
person.
it.
It's not an
Right.
organization. There's
Right.
individuals like just referees in basketball that have thrown a game, but it's not the players, not the whole conglomeration of the sport. Well, what do I know? I'm an old guy who's probably going to have a heart attack walking up these steps after I get down here. But I'll
Uh,
still, as I'm laying there dying, they're calling the ambulance. Bob, you got any last words? I'll say, yeah, the only sport in the business that's a work is wrestling. Angelo Poffo told me even, Angelo Poffo.
yes.
He said the only sport in the world that is a true work is wrestling because even in roller derby, you at least have to know how to skate. Figure that out. And roller derby was a work too back in the day, but you at
Yep.
least had to know how to skate. Where in wrestling, you don't have to know how to wrestle.
No. I don't think
especially
so.
nowadays.
Yeah. What do you think of obviously we touched upon the product today with the PLEs because they're usually pretty good, but there's a big difference between watching wrestling when we were younger than there is today.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with when you're seeing things through the eyes of your youth, you see them differently. When I was a kid, I liked Happy Days. If I watched Happy Days today, I'd go, the Fonz is like the most uncool, effeminate guy I've ever seen in my life. But I had a freaking picture of him on my wall. I had the Fonz on one side, Farrah Fawcett on the other, and Evil Knievel took up all the other parts. But when you see things through the eyes of your youth, you're gonna have a different opinion of them. That's why
Yeah.
certain things like oh, I loved Super Mario when I was a kid. Yeah, you go play it now compared to the video games they have now.
Yeah.
It doesn't hold up.
Yeah.
And that's not everything, but a lot of things they just don't hold up because you see things through the eyes you use. You see them differently.
Right.
You go back and watch old WWF wrestling from the 70s, and you go, I don't have any idea how this business survived. I mean, you could have Bruno against Billy Graham at the Madison Square Garden. It's a crazy bloodbath up and down, and then you could have freaking Haystacks Calhoun against the Wolfman, and you're like, what the hell's going on? You
Yeah.
know, it's
Yeah.
like even championship wrestling from Florida. There's an old episode called from '76. In like one of the matches, a guy named Great Mephisto against some guy. Haystacks Calhoun. I go back to him against two guys. Haystacks could barely get in the ring, let alone should have been in the ring. And he's wrestling two guys who didn't even know how to lace up their boots, but at least they had boots, which is unlike a lot of guys today, which is just horrible. Then you had these other guys, crap. But then the last match on the show was Steve Keirn against Bob Orton Jr., and you thought you saw the greatest thing you ever saw because they were fantastic.
Yeah.
So every era has good, bad, great, and sad. That's the reality, even today. It's
One of
just
the things that
presented different.
yeah, one of the things that aggravates me is it's like every wrestler has kick pads on their boots now.
Pretty much not all of them, but the ones that
Yeah.
have boots, though, I like. Most of them, when they wear the kick pads, just wearing little silly tennis shoes or wrestling shoes or something.
Yeah, like amateur wrestling shoes and stuff. Like a lot of times, it's kind of weird if you ask me. It's
And I don't know. The first thing Malenko said when I started training was, "You got to get yourself some boots." And then I couldn't wait. As a kid who loved wrestling, and here I am training to be a wrestler, and I got to be able to order real pro wrestling boots.
yeah,
I couldn't wait till I got them, and I used to wear them all over the place, trying to break them in. And I mean, so I can't understand the mentality of not wanting to wear wrestling boots.
right.
But at the same time, if you're working for an organization that doesn't care about that stuff and it's not high on your priorities, you're not going to change. Let's say we go back to punches. So many guys today can't even throw a punch. So she shouldn't be doing it, but they do it on national TV. And it's just like every week it's an expose on the business. And people get mad at Eddie Mansfield for what he did back in '85, which is ridiculous because every single week they're exposing the business by some of the crap they do. And by the way, Eddie's a great guy in case you were going to attack me because he's a friend of mine.
I
But
was not
anyways,
going to attack you.
no, because
I'm an
some
Eddie
people do. They go,
Mansfield
"Oh, that
fan.
guy's an idiot." I was like, "Hey, Eddie's a great guy."
No, I'm a fan of Eddie Mansfield. I've communicated him with a little bit through social media, and
Yeah,
I watched his television product. Was it IWF?
yeah, I
In
worked
the
for him.
yeah,
Yeah,
I,
I was the
I
Punisher. I wore a mask. I was the Punisher.
I used to watch that every week on Sports Channel America.
You know what? Yeah, what's funny? They used to tape that out of Orlando, but what's
Yeah,
funny? One Saturday morning, I used to work for a company here in Florida called Suncoast Pro Wrestling. Again, it was started by the Great Malenko. It was run by a guy named Henry Raines, or owned by a guy named Henry. And Malenko called me. It was like in '89. He goes, "Bob, we're going to start a new company called Suncoast Pro Wrestling. I want you to be the top heel, and I want you to be the mass superstar. The real mass superstar is."
yeah,
And people have always would complain when they find out that, oh, you ripped off Billy. No, I didn't. The Great Malenko called me and asked me if I wanted to be part of a TV show, and he wanted me to be the mass superstar. I'm not going to say no to the Great Malenko. If he
right.
came back today from the grave and said, "Bob, I want you to help me bury a body," guess what? I'd grab a shovel. Okay. That's what I would do. So he asked me to be the mass superstar. And I was the mass superstar, and I was feud with his son, Dean, who, in my opinion, is the greatest I've ever been in a ring with. And we had some amazing matches, but the whole point of the story is, geez, I lost track of why I was. Oh, here it is. It goes back to Eddie Mansfield. I wore this mass superstar mask in this outfit, and then on WCW, it's going up and doing the TV shows or TV. I hate to use the term jobber because I hate that term, but I was going up and doing TV. And one Saturday morning, I was on the Suncoast Pro Wrestling show at 7 in the morning as the mass superstar. At 8 o'clock, I was on Eddie Mansfield's show as the Punisher, wearing the same outfit that I wore as the mass superstar, including the mask. And then at 9 o'clock, I was wrestling Tom Zink as Bob Cook on Pro NWA Pro, wearing the same outfit but without the mask. I just thought that was a cool story. 3 different shows, 3 different characters, all wearing the same outfit. Give me an applause. That was awesome.
There you go.
Who can
There you
say
go.
that? Probably nobody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you
Tell
know what
me,
else? No matter
what's
who I
that?
wrestled in those 3 matches, I didn't get hurt at all other than a bumping. I mean, what
There
I'm
you go.
saying is nobody hurt me. No stiffness. No, no,
Yeah.
no, no real fighting.
What do you think of Tom Zank, speaking of which?
Oh, Tom was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was awesome. I'm sad that he passed away so young, but I'm sure he had his personal problems. But to me
Yeah.
personally, he was always cool to me. He'd always walk by me and he'd go, Bob Cook. I don't know why. But I'd sit with him at the bar in Atlanta once in a while. He'd just sit there and he'd drink his little drink and he would talk the whole night as Dusty Rhodes, Yeah, give me another drink, baby. But Tom was great in the ring. One of the best,
I
I've
thought
ever
so.
wrestled in the ring. Super smooth, super easy, light, sell my punches, whatever. And I like to always tell the story the night that Van Vader broke that kid's back, Joe Thurman.
Hmm.
I was the next match out against Tom Zink. So, that kid got his back broken. And I'm wrestling Tom Zink, which was, what they call the proverbial night off in the wrestling business. And after that, Vader broke that kid's back. He came back to the curtain. He was sitting on the ground. He was crying. And I'm sitting there thinking, why is this fat bastard crying? Because I hated Vader. He was such a jerk. Is he crying because he's finally going to get fired after being repeatedly told to stop hurting guys? Or is he crying because he actually has feelings for the guy he might have just crippled? I kind of think it was the first one. He
Right.
thought he was going to get fired. I can't say. But the funniest part about that story is like later that night, we're all standing around in the hallway, all of us are dressed, and they come out and they're like, Vader's match is too brutal. We're not going to be able to air it. We need to redo it. And you could just see people scatter like roaches because nobody wanted to step up and volunteer to wrestle him, right? And I was standing by a payphone. Remember payphones? I grabbed the what do they call those things? The receiver? I
The
don't
receiver? Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I grabbed it and put it to my ear and turned my back to or face to the wall and act like I was talking to somebody because I didn't want to be the next victim with Vader. Luckily, I never had to wrestle him. And it was a Jody Hamilton. It was the assassin, but he was the guy who handled the TV matches. And he told me, "Don't worry, Bob. You're never going to have to work with that fat bastard." And I thanked Jody for that when I saw him a few years ago at a fan fest in Tampa. I said, "I want to thank you again for never making me work with that fat bastard." But now he's no longer here either. But Jody was a great guy.
Yeah. I've
I know
heard
I
that.
get I get crazy. I start talking these silliness. People are going to hate me because I talk bad about Vader. But I always
I've
do
heard.
that. He was a jerk. What are you going to do? People say you shouldn't talk ill of the dead. Here's the rules to life. If you're a good person in life and you die, you can be spoke of as that good person in life just as easily as you could be spoke of as the asshole you were before you died as an asshole after death. An asshole in life is an asshole in death, and I don't care what you say.
That makes sense. That makes sense. You never worked for Jody like in Deep South, did you?
No, no, no.
No.
Probably would have been
Wow.
fun, though. I know his son Nick's a great guy.
Yeah.
Nick Patrick.
And
Jody
he
Hamilton
recently,
Jr.
yeah, he restarted the company.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
I've went back not so long ago and watched a bunch of old videos on YouTube of the older Deep South from the 80s, and I gotta tell you, it was phenomenal.
Yeah,
Phenomenal
Jody was,
TV.
I think he was on there, right, as the assassin a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. He was a great talker and a great performer, wrestler, worker, whatever you want to call him in his day. I'm talking about the assassin, by the way.
Yes. Yes, sir.
People watching now go, "Who's the assassin?" Oh. Anybody who doesn't know the wrestling history now is a pathetic, overbearing, obnoxious, pig-faced bastard because you have more access to knowing the history of wrestling than you ever did in life. And if you're in the wrestling business and you don't know, get out of the wrestling business because you should know because you should want to know.
That's all I
Oh,
do is
I had to
is
let people
is
say
uh
that.
all I do is study wrestling
Are
history.
you a
Besides,
wrestler? Were you a wrestler?
no, but I am a
What am I
media
doing on
person.
this show? Somebody get me a no.
I am a pro wrestling television
Oh, you want to be a
commentator.
wrestler? I got a ring right here.
No,
That's a
I've been
wrestling
in
ring
the
back there.
I am a pro wrestling television commentator and a
Oh,
podcaster.
really?
So
Okay.
yes, I've host
We could use
so
one of those.
yeah. Oh, maybe I'll come to Florida. I'll be in North Carolina during the springtime for AIWF. You can
I was in North Carolina last year. It
you
was
know,
this year. April 20th. Me and George South wrestled Tommy Wildfire Rich and Ricky Morton. See, there I go again, bragging. But hey, man, those are legends.
no, 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 no. See, I have that match listed in my notes here, and I was just about to ask you about that.
Oh,
So let's talk about that because I met Tommy once, I met Ricky once, never met George, but
he's
I have
awesome.
Yeah, that's what I hear. But Tommy's an awesome guy. I was wearing a Dusty Road shirt when I met him, and that I think got him. And then he just was like the nicest guy in the world to me for
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, he was really part of the original boom of the cable television, back in
Yeah.
the early 80s with Georgia Championship Wrestling became World Championship. He was a big star at that time.
Right.
Tommy Wildfire Rich.
Yeah. He was one of the best.
Beat Harley Race for the world title, for God's sakes.
I know. I
Yeah.
know. Great professional wrestler. And that feud that he had with Buzz Sawyer
Oh
was
man,
amazing.
even though Buzz Sawyer was a jerk in real life, again, he falls
I've
into that
heard.
category of Vader. But the matches they had, him and Tommy, man, fantastic.
One of the things with going back to the WWE network that we were talking about, they finally found that last Battle of Atlanta when they had the original network, and then
Yeah, I remember that.
when they moved over to Peacock, they didn't even include that. They just didn't
It's
put it
on
back.
YouTube though, so at least
Oh, they put it up on YouTube. Okay,
not them, but it's on YouTube.
okay,
Sad part about that match is all the years that became a mythical
yeah,
match, and the best part of the match was actually the match with Paul Ellering and Ole at the end was the most.
yeah.
They got the crowd the best, and because the match itself compared to their other matches, and I think a lot of it has to do with that building it up to this mythical match. And you saw the pictures on the magazines of the blood and the cage. You're like, oh my god! And then when you finally saw the match, you're like, oh, geez, it was okay.
That's exactly how I felt.
Right.
Like,
Sometimes things are better off left to the memory or the hype.
yeah, when they finally uploaded, I got so excited about it because I heard about it for
Yep.
decades, and then I watched it. I was like, God, that really wasn't that great.
Yeah. And then Ole and them did their thing. I was like, well, geez, they're getting more of a reaction than Buzz. And that's not taking anything away from them, but I guess, because they had so many great matches. And who knows, their Buzz was probably hung over or something for the match. I don't know. He wasn't.
No, from what
He
I
was such a
understand,
jerk.
he did a lot of stuff from what I heard.
Well, he did die of a drug overdose.
Yep. Yeah.
You want me to tell you how liked Buzz Sawyer was?
Please.
When he died in 1992, I'm not going to say the name because I actually like the guy very much, and he's always been very respectful to me, the person, the wrestler. We're in the dressing room, and the person I'm talking about came in the dressing room, and someone, hey man, did you hear Buzz Sawyer died? And he goes, oh really? Well, I got to take a piss. Where's his grave? So that should tell you how well liked Buzz was.
Wow. That's incredible.
So that goes back to an asshole in life, an asshole in death.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard, he was what he owned a wrestling school or whatever, but then
Yeah,
he would
a
take
different.
money and
What he
then
would do is he would go to areas like rip people off in one area,
yeah.
alienate them, go to another area.
Yeah.
And I guess his brother Brett, who I was friends with sort of in the 80s when he wrestled here in Florida, but he turned on me at the end. I don't know why. He was a psycho at the end. He
Really.
sent me a picture once with him just shooting me birds. There, see you, Bob. And I was like, well, psh. So I sent pictures back shooting him birds, and then I blocked him.
I was trying to do a podcast with him, and this was just a few days before he passed, and he
Oh,
was
really?
having some sort of connection issues. So we said, all right, we'll just come back in a couple days and try it out again. Next thing you know,
Yeah. I
social
saw some of
media.
his
Yeah.
podcasts, and they all had connection issues. This
Yeah.
had the most biggest connection issue. I remember of
Yeah.
some of those podcasts he's talking about how oh, the Undertaker and Arn Anderson better quit talking about my brother. And I'm thinking, well, first of all, they're only speaking the truth, and second of all, what are you going to do about it if he did beat? I mean, even Arn Anderson at his age could have stretched, Brett Sawyer. People are going to go, well, Bob Cook, I don't even know who he is, but he's talking bad about all these legends. Well, you know what? Again, if they're not nice people, they don't deserve to be spoke of nicely.
Yes, I get you.
And
Uh,
again, we go back to this, like everybody, it's over almost 8 billion people on earth, and everybody has different experiences with everybody. So when I say something about somebody, it's not necessarily cut in stone that they are that type of person. These are my own interactions. I just want to make that clear. Like I was
right.
friends with the legendary Evil Knievel, something I'm very proud of. And he didn't always treat people the best, but he treated me and my wife and my son like freaking gold. Anytime he would call me, he was like, "Is your son around?" I was like, "Yeah, let me talk to him." He talked to him, and I said, "What do you want?" Afterwards, he goes, "Oh, he just seen how I'm doing school, and he told me to stay away from drugs, and he did this and that because that's the way he was." But there's other people who had interactions with Evil that weren't on the same level as mine that will speak ill of him. So again, it's my experiences that I'm sharing with people who go, "Hey, who is this fat bastard with a grubby beard?" Well, first of all, I'm getting ready for homelessness. Okay, I want to prepare early, but I'm just being honest. I'm not going to say Vader was this and that if he wasn't. You know what I mean?
Right. I was a huge Evil Knievel fan as a kid. I had that toy you
Me
wind
too.
up in
Yeah. And you can still buy those too, by the way. They make new ones. They're awesome with the
really.
same type box and everything. It's awesome.
Oh, I'm gonna have to
I'll
check
send
that
you the
out.
link for them. I'll send you the
Yeah,
link.
please do, please do. You mentioned the gentleman that's I've considered my favorite professional wrestler ever since I discovered him, Arn Anderson. Let's talk about
Arn.
Arn a little bit. What's your experiences with Arn?
Arn was always cool to me, and even today, like he does his podcast, and he's put me over on his podcast several times, which I thanked him
Yeah,
actually last year or last year, yeah, last year when I saw him at a fan fest in Jacksonville. He's always put over my punch and different things, and I wrestled Arn at the Greensboro Coliseum in 1989, and I always, when I would go in the dressing room, I'd always find, as best I could, a spot in the corner, out of the way, whatever. And on this particular night, I was sitting behind some lockers, and Arn was dressing on the other side, and I heard Flair. Flair walked up, and he said, "Who you got tonight?" And he goes, "I'm working with Bob Cook." And Flair said, "Oh, he's a really good hand. You should have a good match." And Arn goes, "Yes, he is." And they didn't know I heard that. And I'm back there thinking, man, I can't believe they said that. It made me feel like $1 million.
that's really
But
cool.
Arn's always been cool to me. I got to meet his son last year. He's very, very
Yeah,
respectful kid. Yeah.
yeah, he's doing a lot now too in the business.
It's too bad he was working for AEW, but I
Yeah,
guess you get there comes a point where the money's not worth the aggravation. If you
yeah.
have enough money, I guess. To me, it's worth the aggravation for making good money. I put up with a lot of things for good money. Let me tell you.
Well, AEW is a weird product because it's like they'll put you on TV for 2, 3 months and then all of a sudden you disappear. You're just sitting at home and you don't know
Yeah, a lot of
what you're
times,
doing.
yeah,
And yeah, it's weird.
but they got so many people. It's
Yeah.
crazy. They need to, if they could probably fire 50 people and you wouldn't even realize they were there, let alone gone.
Yeah, they have probably the largest roster in professional wrestling because they keep adding people and not really firing people or, letting
To
people
me, the
go.
weirdest thing to me about AEW is they let their top stars work little crappy indie shows and show up here and there. Why would you do that if they're paying them good money? I wouldn't let my guys do that. They could get hurt doing some crappy indie show and not be able to be there for me for my big pay-per-view.
Yeah, I think it's happened a couple times too, hasn't it? People getting
Yeah,
hurt out there. Yeah.
but I don't understand. I don't know the logistics of their contracts, and so who
I
knows?
mean,
I'm just sitting here saying what I see.
they're working one day a week or whatever. So then they're doing indies on the weekends, going to Japan and whatnot. So I
Yeah,
mean,
see, I wouldn't do that if I was making good money. I wouldn't do that. Why would you do that?
yeah, maybe it's part. I mean, I don't know. They get extra
It's like
money. So
it's
yeah.
like you got fans complaining about how, oh, I can't believe the WCW or WCW. What am I thinking of WCW? That the
It's been a while.
WWE's cutting down on house shows next month. I'm like, do you know the wrestlers are probably loving it? We get to do
Yeah.
TV, a couple of house shows here and there, but not every night or every other night. Not only are they going to have longer careers, or even if they don't have longer careers, they're going to have a better afterlife. And I'm not talking about after they die. Like people were complaining earlier, like Roman Reigns hardly ever wrestles. Well, guess what? If Hulk Hogan would have done 2,000 less leg drops, he wouldn't have had to have two hip replacements, knee replacements, and he wouldn't barely be able to walk today, even though he still looks great because he's in shape, looks like he's in shape, but he
Yeah.
has problems walking. That wouldn't probably be his issue if he would have done 2,000 less leg drops. So if
Yeah.
Roman Reigns is not working every night, he may be able to get down on his knees and play with his grandkids when he's 50 or something. Why is that a
You
bad thing?
you also didn't see. I mean, Hogan on TV as much. You probably saw him on TV
Yeah, but he
sparingly.
was
You
still
know what I
working a
mean?
lot of house
Yeah.
shows back in the day,
Yeah.
which you
And
didn't know about.
house show business is down as well. Nobody really cares about house shows. Like the fans, I
Well, I
mean,
mean,
I
no,
mean,
I mean,
I
if you,
would, but yeah.
I don't know if you follow this account on X called WrestleTix.
Yes.
They give you the rundown of all the shows. I mean, this weekend, the WWE did good all over they had almost 10,000 in, where was it? Where was it? Orlando for house shows, and the same in Baltimore, the same nights, and
They're
certainly not
doing
nowhere near as down as it was when I was wrestling for them in '94 or '95.
yeah. Let's talk about the going to WWF here in 1994, you said, right? 1994?
Five, I meant '95.
95,
Yeah,
95?
yeah.
Yeah. So you went out there in 1995. What made you leave WCW to go over there?
Well, actually, I had a little issue with somebody there, but that's some. I won't say who it is because
Okay.
we're friends. We made up a long time ago.
All right.
But I got a call from Jimmy Backlund, who was Jimmy Del Rey, teamed with Tom Pritchard back in the day as the Heavenly Bodies with Jim Cornette. And Jimmy just called me and he said, "Hey, Bob, you want to do WWF TV?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." That's it. And WWE paid more. And even though I hate to fly, they flew you. So you got to the show. They rented your cars, paid for your hotels. Not that WCW didn't do that, but they didn't fly you everywhere.
Right.
But that's how I got in there. Just a call from Jimmy.
And how long did you last there? What, 2 years
Only like
roughly?
only like a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me, it was more. I just got sick of being in pain all the time and getting hurt all the time, and I was able to get an easy job doing an airport limo job, and I was like,
Okay.
boy, this is so much easier than driving all over the country. I'm still driving,
Yeah.
still carrying my luggage, but it's someone else's. And I did that for
So,
like 14 years.
so you basically retired from professional wrestling after you left WWF?
No,
No.
just the TV stuff. You see, it's
Okay.
all indie. I'm doing a show January 11th right here.
That's right. Yeah. So you're
I
still
mentioned it
pretty active.
already. I already mentioned that. I even put my friend Joe over. Remember that?
So you're still pretty active in the world of professional wrestling with the Twisted Wrestling Alliance.
Now I am. I was living
Yeah.
in Tennessee for a while with Fred Altman and his wife,
Okay.
and then I had an opportunity to come back to Florida. Let's just say,
Okay.
and this just worked out great. And Joe put this thing together, which is amazing, and is always adding things to it, just making it better and better. And what we're trying to start a wrestling school. We have people that say, "I'm going to show up. I'll be there." And then there's excuses after, and I realize that Bob Cook's not. I'm not Ricky Steamboat. I'm not going to be able to show you how to do the arm drag. I can show you how to take an arm drag because Steamboat was awesome. But
I mean,
uh,
I hang around at the Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling School. That's what I'm a part of.
with
It's
Mario,
Mario and Paul Roma. You know what
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean? So, I've done commentary for their live streams. So, they run a really good school over there. So there's nights there a lot of people show up, and some nights it's only a few
yeah,
people. You know
yeah.
what I
That's
mean?
always the way it is. I
Yeah.
never met Mario in person, but
Great guy.
we're friends on Facebook, and I did his podcast. He says, "Yeah, he seems like a really nice guy," and I love the name Paradise Alley. I'm hoping it's based on the movie, right? It has to
Well,
be.
that's his favorite movie.
Well, mine too. It's my favorite
Yeah.
wrestling movie. I can't
Okay.
say it's my
So
favorite movie, but favorite wrestling movie.
I
I mean,
watched
Terry
that for the
Funk.
first time this year because based on that, I found it and I actually, finally watched it and it's not a bad movie.
No, I mean, they portray wrestling as serious, but it's still a great
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
And they had all the legends that were in there, and the little clips where they do those montage of Harley Race and Dory and Ted DiBiase. I mean, it's a huge list. Ray Stevens,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
but Terry
Uh
Funk is my favorite wrestler of all time, and the reason I wanted to be a wrestler, and the reason you can't see it, but I'm wearing an earring right there. That's because of Terry Funk.
well, Terry Funk is that you caught me on an off day. I wear my Terry Funk shirt several times a week. So
I wore that yesterday when I did my Cookers podcast, which, by the way, I haven't mentioned, but I started doing that here at the studio because, we're trying to figure, it's again, a work in progress. And I had my Terry Funk boots on and my Terry Funk shirt. And we beat some guy's butt. If you go back and watch the clip, you're not supposed to see it, but it got leaked to the internet.
so
That's what happens.
let's talk about your podcast a little bit. You started this podcast when?
Only like what, 3 weeks ago?
Okay. How many
Something like
episodes do you
that.
have out?
And the thing is, I was just like sitting here and I'm going, I should do a podcast because I'm not comfortable on camera just because of the way I look.
Right.
I have self-esteem issues and self-confidence issues. I'm trying to work on it by going to the gym and coming home and drinking too much Mountain Dew and eating chicken tenders. But, but, so we just decided to do it. And, it's been fun. Some are better than others. And, I interviewed an old friend from WCW, Robbie Ito, on the first one.
Right.
And we had so much fun back in the day together. And, the Southern Posse here in Florida, which is a famous tag team who also did a lot of WCW. Go back to Vader. We talked about that story where Vader, I like to say, busted Rick Thames' nose from the posse, but made his nose bloody. He wouldn't sell it. I told embellish. He bloodies your nose. Tell people it's broken. Come on. Play along, for God's sake. What do they call it? Embellish? They call it embellishment, right?
Embellishment. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like when I wrestled at the Orange Ball in Miami, there was like 20,000. When I tell the story now, 48,642.
Uh,
There would have been
so
more, but some old lady fell from the upper deck and they took her out on a stretcher.
when does your podcast when does it drop weekly?
We try to do it Sunday afternoons, and then it gets up sometime later that day. You just upload it to our YouTube channel and the Facebook page. It's
Yeah.
it's a slow build. I don't really know what I'm doing. Because I
Yeah, it
want to
took
get
me
guys. I'll
forever.
get guys on an adventure where you're doing like this, where you have the, you know,
The video.
this. Well, we're doing video, but
Yeah,
we're doing only with people who can be here live in person. Sitting in the
right.
ring with our little chairs, our director chairs, and but eventually, because
Yeah,
I'd like to get Cactus Jack on the show if I could, and other people that I know in the business, like Brian Blair and different people that, but they probably wouldn't want to come all the way to, the studio.
I
Although I
did
do got
a
Joe Malenko. Joe Malenko, you know who Joe Malenko is?
yeah.
Brother
We
of Dean
talked about him
Malenko, one of
earlier.
the best.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right, of course. He's
yeah.
agreed to come here sometime. So,
I would love to get in touch with him if I have no idea how, but I did
well,
talk
I
to
can do
Brian.
that.
If you could send him
I
my
just talked to
way.
him on the phone yesterday. Let me see if I can still talk to him again. No, I can tell him you want to do him, have him on hot. Got me flustered over here, Joe. My friend Joe's sitting there playing on his phone. He's just watching porn. It's innocent.
It's all right.
I can say who he's watching, but might get me in trouble. I'm just kidding about that. Don't listen. But what was I saying?
Talking about
Uh,
Joe. Yeah,
yeah, I can tell Joe you want to be on, or you want him to be on your podcast.
yeah, absolutely.
Can't say he'll do it, but I can say, hey, this guy wants
Yeah,
you to be on the podcast.
you never know. You never know. You also are very heavily involved. Let me see if I can say this without getting tongue-tied. The Cauliflower Alley Club.
That's right. I am the social media coordinator. And
Yes.
Brian Blair, who's also, like I mentioned earlier, is a great friend, but he's the president of the club. We got Medusa,
Yeah.
who works on the board of directors, who's also a great lady, and several other people involved. And it's a great organization for anybody who out there who doesn't know. You go to caulifloweralleyclub.org and you can become a member. Anybody can become a member, fans and wrestlers. And personally, and I think any wrestler who's not a member should be ashamed of themselves because what it is, it's a business or business. The organization gives back to people. I'm not going to be ashamed. They helped me during times when the hurricanes damaged our area and whatever. They helped me. And when what they're there for is to help wrestlers who fall on hard times for whatever reason, you know. And they're there. They've been doing it for 59 years, starting this year.
That's amazing.
And it was started by an old wrestler named Mike McGursky, who was actually an actor too back in the 50s, 60s, whatever. It originally was for wrestlers, boxers, and Hollywood stuntmen, but now it's just for wrestlers. So if you're in the wrestling business and you need some financial help, legitimate financial help, and if you're sticking needles in your arm and you're a heroin addict, they're not going to help you. But if you fell down some stairs and you can't work your real job or something real happened in your life, hurricanes, tornadoes, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
They'll step up and help you. And this year, they've given out over $70,000, one of the most
That's amazing.
successful years ever, bringing money in, sending money out to help the people in the business.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Brian's an amazing guy. I
Yeah, he
interviewed
is.
him last year. I think he came on the show. Great guy as well. So
Yes,
yeah,
very, very awesome guy.
yeah,
But anybody who's not part of that club, I go wrestlers. I think in every wrestling school, they should teach the importance of the Kelly for Alley Club. You're just starting out. There may be a time in your career, whether it's 10 years, 30 years, 5 years down the road, where you're going to need them. And it's not going to be there if we don't have, keep the momentum going. The more, it's like anything, the more members you make, the more money you have, the more people you can help. Pretty much easy science. It's not Bush math. Or was that Bush math? Whose math was that? Clinton math? I don't know. But it's pretty easy to figure out. More members, more money, more help.
there you go. There you go. Everybody check it out. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find Bob Cook?
Well, you can find Bob Cook sitting in front of a TV with Mountain Dew in his. Oh, you're talking about something else? Uh, Facebook is Bob Cook. Shit. I can't see. I don't know. Oh, actually, the promo for the show coming up January 11th, Twisted Wrestling Alliance Studios, the Cuban Assassin, that dirty bastard. Oh, I said bastard. I didn't mean to say dirty. With his manager, Fantasy, Frankie Reyes, the dog, Snake in the Grass. He's the one who hired the Cuban with Chief Eddie Two Rivers against me, Joe Saraceno, Delicious D, right here at Twisted Wrestling Studios. That's something they should do too, is follow Twisted Wrestling Studios on Facebook, Twisted Wrestling Studios on, or Twisted Wrestling Alliance on YouTube.
And make it a point, check out Pro Wrestling Wire. They got lots of great interviews, lots of great wrestling news. You can check them out online and make it a point to enjoy the best in professional wrestling right here on Pro Wrestling Wire.